All right. So, I made a little animation here, and it's basically practice with water. So I have three types of water in here. I have rain, I have like a flood, and then I have bubbles, and a waterfall actually also. So let's run through it real quick. No, OpenToonz just loves to tank. And I'm doing this at 12 frames per second because I'm lazy. It just skips so many frames all the time. Let's see. Here's a better rendering. I guess it's not that much better. Anyway, you get the point. So, how did I do this? Well, first I wanted to make like a comedic little cartoon. And I started with the one thing that doesn't like to get wet in the rain, and that's hair. So, this guy, that's hair, and that's his umbrella. And the first thing I started out is I wanted him to get rained on just a drizzle, and then as the rain increases, he gets bogged down. He gets pressured by the rain, and then as things increase, finally, he just gets poured on like a huge blast of whatever the hell this is, just a bunch of water. So here I drew out 7 frames of rain, and I just sequentially followed each single drop. Um, Basically, I drew them in drop by drop, and then just in the next frame, I just lowered them down a little bit. In the next frame, this is frame by frame. So, and one of the things that I made sure I add is like these little, see like how it makes a little circle, and the circle gets a little bigger and dissipates, and it starts somewhere else. So these are all just individually drawn little circles. You just add a little detail. And then every now and again I made a little splash. And I also made sure I add a couple on the umbrella here to establish the character's space in the animatic. And all it is just 2 layers. This is just a quick 1 hour animation. So then I just repeated this layer once again, and then once again, and then once again. So 4 times. So about a second long um, up until that point right there. That's what it looks like. And some of these raindrops, you don't have to make this a perfect cycle, because people can't keep track of all these particles, shall we say. So they can't keep track with their eyes. As long as you give them emotion, it'll do just fine. And then we go into the next pose, which is the stronger rain. And I made the lines a little longer to give them some kind of emotion blur. And then I just added a bunch of these um, splashes and a bunch more circles. And the frames that I did they're much shorter, so I only did 4 frames instead of 7. And actually this frame does not belong in there. This 4th frame, I messed that up. But you know what? We're not all perfect. And that lasts about half a second, I think. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it lasts about a second also. Um, and then I'm adding even more lines here on the umbrella and just varying them for each frame. See, this is where the mistake happens. This 4th frame shouldn't exist, but it does. it must be because I copied these frames over and over and over, and then finally when it came time to draw it where it belongs, as an initiation to this huge water thing, um, it ended up being copied here. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, bottom line is you make a short cycle, and there you have it. And then the start of the huge waterfall is, of course, this. Now, ideally, there should be some lines in here because the previous rain didn't go away. This is literally how I did it last time. And then we'll forget about it here. It's okay. Whatever. And then you can see as the water breaks off of the umbrella and then goes down. And then the next scene we have is, and I could have made the character a little bit more compressed here, but I didn't want to. So in the next thing we have is a lot of compression. So he gets the huge wave of water, and let's see now. Pay attention to this line right here. This is how I'm starting to show the motion of the water. So I'm drawing in these lines. And if I were to paint the water, I would make this white or light blue, and then I would make this dark blue. So I'm gonna advance this area at the next frame. The next key I have, I'm gonna advance it. So there it is down there, and then we start a new one from the previous frame that starts up here, and then it's down here. And then we have, and as the water crashes down, of course compresses the umbrella, and it splashes onto the pavement and immediately reflects the other way because the ground's certainly not going to move. So it makes a splash. And in the next frame, and I drew all these on ones. I wanted to do them on ones because I just wanted more detail in that motion, but at the same time, I want it happening kind of fast. Since it's at 12 frames per second, this is technically on 2s at 24 FPS. In the next frame, the umbrella gets blown away because the umbrella is so light, it's not going to stay under that waterfall. And then pay attention to these lines right here as they sequentially progress down the picture. And then each time, so the small splash, and then just like smaller particles, and then bigger parts of water because now more water is down on the floor. So you have more water reflecting back, more volume coming back up. And then here even more volume, and not only that, but it's coming back up, and then gravity starting to act back on it to push it back down. And then we have stuff spilling on the floor because it's not all going to go up. Some of it is going to go forward. And one of the things that I would do here is if I was coloring this, I would shade this in with a darker color. And that's what I'm going to do. And then some of these parts I would shade in. Because some of this stuff, it's underneath of where the light is going to be pointing at it. And then obviously you see how the volume has increased and the umbrella is in our face now because it's getting blown away so hard, pushed away so hard by the water. And here I'm starting to draw in some waves because now the water volume is so high, it's actually starting to make a body of water of its own. So all I did was just pull some wavy lines. No thought process there whatsoever. I just made sure I kept adding these, I kept following through with these water particles, wherever they're going. See how this one's moving forward a little bit. That one's moving forward a little bit. When the frames are moving that fast, you can't even tell where these particles are, so I just make sure I focus on the biggest ones. So like this one, for example, let's just put him here. And then in the next frame, we're going to put him up here. And then the umbrella is way in our face. And then this water, this part's going to be shaded. Maybe we can shade this part in a little bit. And then this is kind of like the edge of the wave that's coming towards us and that's about to be pushed down by gravity this way. And then here's the front, the wave, this wave right here. It's gotten bigger and it's gotten more in our face and more into the camera. So I'm drawing it at a higher level, and I'm going to do that all the way up until here, about here. And each time I'm trying to draw this pillar a little wider, until it finally stops. And then the umbrella is now gone out of the picture because it gets blown away with the next frame. And then you have just a little bit of more particles remaining. Most of these particles, smaller particles, have now fallen down because most of the water volume is now on the ground. And I shaded this stuff in, of course. And then like some of these, so now I'm starting to add these lines again. Notice I added them here, and then I'll add one right there. And these are going to give us our sense of motion once again. And so will this down here. You can freely add them down here as well, because they're gonna be the things, the lines that are conveying motion for us. And if I were to paint them, I would definitely paint them lighter. So I would shade this in a little bit, because that's, maybe shade this in a little bit. And this is like the front of the wave. Sometimes it's a little bit foamy, but I'm not gonna make it foamy here because it's really not crashing onto anything. It's just leading the pack. And then and then it's coming back down. So let me turn on the onion skin here. So I'm gonna advance some of these lines. Start some new ones. You can see how exact of a science this is. And now these are basically just drastic changes between each picture, because things are moving so fast that you can't really tell. So when this wave finally crashes down to the ground, now we just have a body of water that is moving in a wave-like fashion. So all the water has now fallen down, and I'm just following that up with whatever particles are remaining. Kind of like when you drop it out of a bucket, you always have that last like spray of crap, you know, like the little extending bubbles and whatnot. And then here I just made sure I pull a lot of lines that are wavy, and I added a lot of these streaks, which were going to make it seem like a smooth surface. And then here, this wave is already in our face here. Now if I was to add an extra frame here, wait a minute, what the hell did I just do? Here we go. Let's make an in-between picture for this. So, since that wave is way up here, we're gonna make, so this guy, that's this guy, and he's gonna be way up here, because he's gonna be getting so close into our face that we're not gonna be able to see these other waves. And all I do is just, whenever I make the next wave, I just do the opposite of what is being presented here. So I'll go like this is down, so I'll make this going up, starting to go down, so I'll make it go further up, and I'm just doing the opposite. and then down. And then we'll draw some of these streaks. The science is also not very exact on these, but just try to show the curvature of the waves. That's probably the most important thing. And don't forget about the perspective. The last remaining bit of water, and then we'll throw this one in there too. Nah, maybe we will. All right, let's throw them in there, and then we'll make these lines a little bit smaller. Let's add some more water here, and we can add a couple of splashes here. And then the next line is in our face. This wave is coming now in our face, and we're seeing the underneath. Sorry for the motorcycle outside. We're seeing the underneath the water surface. So this is the water surface, and the bubbles are coming into our face more and more, and we're just making them bigger. We're just making them bigger each time. And progression. As more of these bubbles get bigger, we're always making sure to draw in the smaller bubbles that are like beginning, that are just coming into view. So that, because if you were just to draw these bubbles get bigger, then the next frame there'd be nothing else coming in. It'd be just an empty frame. So always make sure you draw in more smaller bubbles coming in, and then as these big bubbles pass, then it dissipates a little bit. And then we just get whatever's left over, the small bubbles. And you know what? If I was cool, I would draw in come on OT. If I was cool, I would draw in some more of these lines. To just give us a sense of movement. And now we can't see too many of those lines because they're covered up by the balloons, the bubbles. And then we'll add before and after. And as the water starts to move back down, we add a couple more squigglies, a little less balloons. And his hand starts to surface through the water, and because the water is speeding around it, we draw in these little wave squigglies, and we're still adding. Now the water is still smooth on the surface, so we're just adding more of these lines here, and then we'll just make them come down, and more of his arm is exposed. And notice as the water moves down, his arm is just taking a beating, so it's actually coming down with the water, like kind of like a dead plant. And you're starting to see some streaks form from the water surrounding him. And finally the water retreats, and just the puddles are left. And I just drew them in. I just removed the water all of a sudden, so let's see what all this animation looks like. There it is. Not too shabby. That's that for today.